Rick Fobaum and Erica Sargent, weeknights on CBS 4 News. Now, from CBS 4 News, this is Facing South Florida with Jim Defede.
Good morning, I'm Jim Defede, and welcome to Facing South Florida. If you regularly drive in Miami-Dade County, be prepared to start paying a whole lot more in tolls. This weekend, tolls along the Dolphin and other expressways will be going up. We'll talk to a representative of the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority and a critic of the toll increases in a moment. But first, here's a little background from my colleague, David Sutter.
Hey, you got everything you need? That's not due for about a week or two.
Kent Crook has been in business for nearly 30 years.
Service and repair is what we're all about. From panels to landscape lights to hanging fixtures, flat screen TVs on the wall.
Every morning, his fleet of a dozen trucks hit the highway, moving from job to job.
We're on the road all the time. For the last 4 months, we spent over $1,000 a month on tolls just to keep the trucks on the road.
When Crook recently learned tolls on the 836 were going up, he finally had enough.
Somebody has to pay for it, and I'm in business, to believe it or not, to make a profit. So if things like this happen, I have to in turn turn around and charge the customer a little bit more for these tolls.
As of Saturday, 17 toll points went live. By his estimate, Cook will now be paying 50% more in toll. Critics are calling it Tollmageddon.
Tollmageddon. It's just people are going to get off this highway here, and people are going to be outraged.
Carlos Garcia is co-chair of a group called RollbackTolls.com. Last year, Rollback Tolls rallied to try and stop the toll increase, but Miami-Dade Expressways Board narrowly passed it. Critical votes came from board members appointed by Miami-Dade commissioners.
This is the truth. The reality is big tolls are coming to the 836. MDX is a government agency. This is big government tolling, what's going on here.
This map, enhanced by Rollback Tolls, is the sobering reality of what is happening. Essentially, you won't be able to drive on the 836 in any direction without paying a toll. Even drivers driving less than a mile will be hit for 30 cents. It may not seem like much, but it adds up. The drive from the Turnpike to downtown Miami was $2.50. Now it's $4.20. For the daily commuter, that's an extra $34 a month. A tank of gas for a sedan. Annually, it's over $400. A car payment. We requested to interview Miami-Dade Expressway Authority's chairwoman, Maritza Gutierrez, about it. Instead, MDX gave us their public information officer.
Why? Well, our board is all a voluntary board. They all have full-time jobs, and they weren't available to come out.
MDX did defend their plan. Up until now, 45% of drivers on the 836 were getting a free ride. Now, everyone pays.
Some will pay more. Some will pay where they've never paid before. And some will pay less than what they currently pay. But by everybody paying for the portion that they use, we're now able to move forward with critical improvements to the expressway.
The tolls will raise nearly $1 billion for new road construction. It includes additional lanes and streamlined exits, including the flyover that's always backed up at I-95.
If we don't do anything with the increase of population that we're expecting within even the next 30 years, traffic will continue to get worse and worse and worse.
Garcia believes it will get worse, and you'll pay more for it.
I hope Miami's ready to be stuck in traffic and pay 50% more in tolls.
It sounds like you don't trust them anymore.
Well, I would say after 4 years, there is some skepticism.
And this is why. MDX has made some questionable decisions over the years, the most visible on the 874, also known as the Don Shula Expressway. It got a makeover a few years ago with some lush landscaping. According to MDX, the expense was required by law. But many don't see why we needed dozens of exotic palm trees trucked in from Arizona for $8,000 each.
We end up with $8,000 palm trees everywhere as far as the eye can see, and we have extravagant, unnecessary, in my opinion, landscaping that we need it to look nice, but we don't need it to look like, Las Vegas, the Bellagio. It's a highway. I need it to get to work.
And Garcia is not alone.
But with all this money that's being spent, wouldn't you think that the traffic would be getting better? But it's not. It's getting worse.
What should drivers do if they don't want to pay or can't afford to pay?
Whoever doesn't want to use the expressway and pay the toll doesn't have to. It's their choice.
Getting off the expressway may not be a good alternative if thousands of like-minded drivers are doing the same thing. There is some relief, though, for drivers who use this roadway all the time. MDX is actually coming out with a $120 rebate program, $120 a year. For more information on that, go to our website at cbsmiami.com. In Doral, David Sutter, CBS 4 News.
Joining me now to discuss what's happening on our roads is Carlos Garcia from rollbacktolls.com and Javier Rodriguez, the Executive Director of the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority. Javier, I just want to start with you because I want to start with something that was in that package.
Yes.
In that story, it said that Maritza Gutierrez, the chairwoman of the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority, was not available. Correct. I spoke to Maritza yesterday, and she said she was available. Did you speak to her?
I did not speak with her.
So how did she become unavailable to us when she said she was?
She has a job. She takes care of a doll store. She has a big business, and she wasn't available.
Because CBS 4 News contacted the Expressway Authority 2 weeks in advance, asking to speak to the chairwoman of the organization, and we were told she wasn't available. Right. So I don't understand that. I don't understand why we were lied to about her availability.
I'm not sure why you were lied to either.
You going to find that out?
I will find that out and get back to you.
All right, let's pick it up from there. The next thing, I want you to talk to the person who, you know, the business owner who is in that piece, who's going to have all these additional costs now to his business. How do you address it to him? What he's going to go through and having to pass the bills on to the rest of us?
I've addressed it with many of the folks that have businesses and have to go on the facilities, including my family. And here's the option: we could choose not to do anything. We could choose not to improve the highways. We can choose not to fix the interchanges, widen the facilities, provide for future bus rapid transit. And the results would be they'd probably go out of business because the trucks would be stuck on the highway or stuck on the arterials. There wouldn't be a solution. So as this community grows and as this economy grows, the infrastructure has to keep pace with it. That's how I respond. Is it difficult? Yeah, it's difficult.
Carlos?
Yes. The economic impact of this toll rate increase is going to be felt far and wide. For a long time, MDX has said, well, if you don't want to pay the toll, don't take the highway and you don't pay the toll. And in this case, that statement rings false, because we will all feel the impact. Even if you've never been on the 836 or an MDX road, you will be paying the toll in the way of higher prices to our goods and services in our community.
I want to come back to something you said just a second ago, talking about if we do nothing, we would not have the money available to do these improvements.
Correct.
That's not my understanding. My understanding is that you have, with these new toll increases, a 5-year plan to be able to do these improvements.
Yes, and I want to clarify something in the piece that David Setta said. The tolls that we implemented and the additional revenue that we're going to collect, which is $52 million, is leveraging $300 million bond offering that helps finance an $800 million program. So without the tolls, without closing our system, without setting the toll rates at 70 cents, because I'm sure we'll get into that debate, we could have done a smaller program. We could have piecemealed a lot of the improvements on 836 and been at it for the next 15 years.
You see, I think you just got to my point.
Yeah.
My understanding is it wouldn't be 15 years. My understanding is that if you had closed the system, collected both east and west, but kept the tolls the same, rather than having to do this, rather than having the money in 5 years to do the improvements that you outlined, you'd have it in 10. Is that correct?
Is
that correct?
It's not 100% correct, no, because the money then would be different, because the construction pricing, the cost of the project would exponentially grow in time.
But when you said before, if we don't do anything, we won't be able to do any improvements, that's not actually true. If you didn't raise the tolls, you would still be able to do it. It'd just be a slower process.
It would be a slower process.
And that's been our point. The name of our group is not end the tolls or get rid of the tolls. It's roll back the tolls. And the idea that I presented to the MDX board prior to the March 19th meeting was to split up the present cost of the per mile rate on the 836 and divide it amongst the new tolling points that they wanted to do. Jim, they would have been able to raise a substantial amount of money because everyone will now be paying into the system. Doesn't it seem fair that if everyone is paying into the system, that the toll should stay the same, or maybe even one would argue that you could lower the toll?
Well, because I think you're raising an interesting point here, and I want to explain it a little bit better for our viewers. Like, take the 836, for example.
Correct.
Right now, when I get on the 836 and I go westbound, I don't pay anything.
Correct.
There's no tolls for me to pay. When I come back eastbound, I pay a toll. So I understand the process of closing the system. When we talk about closing the loop, that means you're now going to pay going west and east.
Correct.
And you can modify it accordingly, whether or not what you want to collect.
Correct.
My understanding is one of the proposals you could have done was, without raising tolls, simply close the loop and start collecting money in both directions, and then that would have been money that you could have used to the improvements.
That was our idea.
See, Jim, this is the discussion that took place at the board level. That argument of just taking the existing revenue and splitting it amongst the highway would not have yielded the funding necessary to make improvements. So we would have closed the entire system and not been able to show anything for the improvements.
But wait a second, you did say that if you close the system, you would have raised money, and you still would have been able to do the projects you want to do, just not as quickly as you wanted to
Correct.
do them.
We proposed 5 different rates back in 2012 to go into the public. We started at 60 cents per gantry, all the way up to the 70 cents per gantry. And there was combinations thereof in the middle. And each one of them had an economic impact and raised a certain amount of funds. And each one of them would finance a program.
Let me give you an example.
Sure.
I mean, we just figured out what it's going to cost me now to come to work if I take the 836, because I don't do the whole thing. Right now, I pay $1 if I use the 836 in both directions. It's now going to cost me to use the 836 every day, $3.10. Now, I'm a big shot on TV. I can afford the $2.10 additional a day. But there are a lot of people, some of the people who work at this station and work on the floor of this station, you know, who get paid by the hour, and that's a good chunk of their hourly wage suddenly going to pay increased tolls.
Very, very true.
So the option is to let everyone else, the other 55% who are paying tolls throughout the county, cover the cost of 836. It's similar to setting a budget and saying only half the people are going to pay the property tax and the other half are just going to carry it on.
But the average person, if I'm average in some ways, I'm going from $1 to $3.10.
See, we did the numbers for average, and 836 is a unique facility, which is why we left it for last. It is not like 874 or the Gratney that we discussed before the show. There, we could simply take whatever we were collecting in tolls and split it throughout the corridor. 836 is different. There's a lot of entrances and exits. There's a lot of different trips. Doral, where we're at right now in the studio, has grown tremendously. The jobs here in Doral are incredible. Over 200,000 people come in and out of the city every day. Most of the trips on 836 are actually going from the Turnpike to the Doral area and back.
I want to get to this issue of trust, because I think it's an important one. I want you to be able to address it. You are going to raise a lot of money through this.
We've said it, $52 million a year.
$52 million a year.
Which we've leveraged to sell bonds to finance their work program.
Right, and bonds that we'll be in debt for.
Correct.
You know, as David pointed out in that piece, you know, suddenly importing palm trees from Arizona. I don't know why we need Arizona palm trees in Florida.
That's a very big point.
But my point is, I don't think that you've developed the trust to be able to give us the confidence you're going to spend this money correctly.
I don't understand why someone would think that we haven't. Every project we've committed to, whether it's on our system or helping a partner agency, we have committed to it, we've developed it, we've delivered it on time and on budget. We have actually negotiated contracts below market price. We actually took advantage of a bad economy to put more work out on the street. We have developed partnerships with our
university.
university.
Why Arizona for trees?
It's not an Arizona issue. We set a program. We did a public bid. A contractor bid. He was 55% lower than everybody else.
Go ahead.
That's just one example. The Majul palm trees trucked in from Arizona is one small example. The fact that our toll money is being sent out of the state, be it through a contractor or whatever, when we have tons of native, fully mature royal palms for a fraction of the price.
We can get into the discussion of royal
I don't want to get into palms. I guess the bottom line to me is, you know, you are going to now control a lot of money, and that's one of the things that, you know, I think that the average person out there would have preferred to have had you do this a little slower,
absolutely,
and for them to pay less than for you to do it what it is. And I think you're going to have some trouble with the legislature on some of this.
I will tell you that the closing of 836 was actually supposed to happen almost 3.5 years ago, and the board had a conversation and said we can't do this because the economy is bad, and they deferred it.
That board voted 7-6.
Correct.
Right. Very narrow margin.
Correct.
Do you see any possibility of rolling this back at all?
The bonds have been sold.
Now, let me ask you this. Last question, and then I'm sorry we got to end here. There's also a provision in this to allow for CPI and
Consumer price index.
Consumer price index. So these tolls could go up every year if the board approves the increases, correct?
They could, but it's a board action that would require it.
Just like the board action voted to increase it the last time, the board action could vote to increase it again.
Or they can choose not to implement the CPI. Because
Is the CPI automatic, or does it have to be voted on by the board?
It has to be voted on by the board. And actually, we've had a policy of CPI since 2008, and the board has chosen never to apply it.
Carlos, briefly.
We need to look at the MDX board and the structure of it. These are appointed directors. They need to be elected. If someone is able to have that much power to raise a tax or raise a toll, they should be elected. And the fact that CPI indexing, we should absolutely fight that tooth and nail. It should not be allowed.
All right, I got to end it here. There's a lot to talk about. Maybe we'll get into more of it another time. Carlos Garcia and Javier Rodriguez, thank you very much for coming in. Still ahead, did Miami-Dade police take a blind man for a ride and leave him in the middle of nowhere? And is it time we have an honest conversation about decriminalizing marijuana? That's coming up next.